Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Lynn Anderson, and I want to present to you a story that when I taught middle school some years back, I was able to share a story about a young man that showed perseverance, intelligence, and the will to want to become better. But not only that, the story of a survivor. And this story comes from a book that we read with our 7th and 8th graders, and we read them in groups. And this story was very heart-wrenching. It gave a lot of emotions, but the students most definitely latched onto the book, latched onto every word in the book, posed lots of questions, had lots of emotions. I had students that cried. I had students that threw the book across the room in anger. And it was definitely one of those books that I will always cherish throughout my teaching career. And the name of this book is called A Child Called It. A Child Called It starts with, it was being told by the author, whose name is David Pelzer, who published this book back in 1995. And he also published 2 other books that goes along with the series that talks about his life growing up from a young child to being in foster care, and then going from foster care into the U.S. Navy. U.S. Air Force. And it was a lot of deep information, but we're just going to talk about A Child Called It. This story started in Daly City, California, and this story starts with it was one of the worst cases of child abuse in the state of California. And you would think that this wouldn't happen because, he had both mother and father, siblings. You would think it's just a great, family. And this was not one of those stories. The story goes from his years of child abuse from the ages of 4 through 12. And so growing up, he had his mother. His father was a firefighter. His mother was a stay-at-home mom. And he had 4 other brothers. So in the book, the names were changed. So you had Ron, Stan, Russell, and Kevin. But their names are definitely different in real life. And while the mom, who was probably the most interesting character throughout the whole book, because she really had a lot of issues. And one thing we learned was she was an alcoholic. And with her being an alcoholic, she learned to project a lot of her anger out onto the one that she chose of all the 5 boys, which was Dave. And she would play psychological games, such as, if you clean your chores, I'll give you a hug, or if you do your chores, I will give you some food. And she did a lot of things that definitely constitutes as abuse, such as he was stabbed. She purposely burned his arm on the stove. She had him drink ammonia. She's even had him taking hot baths and poured ammonia in it and tried to actually put him into the bath. She broke his arm, and she would feed him table scraps, such as if his brother would not eat all of his cereal and he cleaned his chores, he would get the remaining of the bowl of cereal. Or she fed him spoiled scraps. But, those were some of the things that he went through in his lifetime from 4 through 8. And also during that time going to school, there was a lot of questions. And the mother did a great job of trying to mask all these issues. Now, while at home, the father, although he did not know much about the abuse early on, he was a firefighter, so he worked some days 24 hours on, as I assumed, and some 24 hours off. And the father was almost like the protector for Dave. He kind of took up for him, made sure he was treated semi-fairly, unlike the other brothers who took the mom's side. She even trained them to, tell on him if he tried to steal food, if he tried to do something that was outside of what she wanted, if he didn't clean his chores. They would tell on him, and of course he would get punished. And those punishments were severe beatings. He was also exiled to the basement, where he slept on an army cot for the majority of his childhood until the age of 12, when he was taken from the home. But moving a little bit back, the father, in my opinion, was one of those people who really tried to hold things together, but also the mother was an alcoholic. So you can imagine the kind of, treatment she will also give the husband. And the husband being at work, it might have been his solace. So one of the things that the father did, once he kind of found out some of the things that were going on, the father left. And this, in my opinion, was one of the most important parts of the story, because Dave used his father as his protector. And now that the protector is no longer there, he had to learn how to truly survive her psychological games and abuse. And the biggest part that, when his father left, he did not come back and get any of the sons, especially Dave. He just left the family with the mom, and that was it. So now Dave has no protector. No one is there for him. So now he has to go into survival mode. He has to learn how to maneuver small wins from her psychological games. And those kind of things really, really, set things off, because once the father left, the abuse got worse. Now, the whole time he's going through school, the teachers are noticing, he's coming to school with clothes that have holes in it. Clothes are filthy and dirty. Sometimes she's sent to school with no lunch for the most part, because there was a period of time where she would starve him. And so he would steal the food from other students and would eat their food because he wasn't getting the food. And the teachers were really noticing all these signs of abuse. But the problem was, back in the 70s, there were no laws that protected these children and teachers from reporting child abuse. But by the time he reached the age of 12, the abuse was, once the father was out of the house, the abuse got worse. The teachers decided, well, we're going to step in, and they really helped him out. And from that point, everything was given to Child Protective Services. The state came in and they removed Dave from the home. And now Dave is in foster care. And then that leads on to the next book, which was called The Lost Boy, which we're not going to discuss at this point. But during that time, he was in foster care. He tried to reach out to his brothers, and the mother would stop those communications. So he didn't have anyone to look forward to communicating with. So he would just go into foster care. He was adopted. And then during that period of time, he was just really trying to find love and affection and someone who really, truly, genuinely loved him. And this was something that really latched on to our middle school students, because it seems like some of them related to some of the issues that were going on within this household, and they really to the point where their class as a whole really just stuck together, really protected each other. If someone was missing an assignment, they would help this person try to get on board. If somebody needed help, they were always trying to help each other. If a student, went without in terms of needed new shoes or needed new uniform shirts, because our school was uniform, they would literally, go home and try to find shoes and extra shirts so these students can actually come to school and learn. And to this day, they are still a tight-knit group of students. And this book was one of those books that really helped them to understand that you may be going through a lot of things in your life, but there's always someone who has it worse. And that person who was going through it worse was able to be successful. And now Dave Pelzer, to this day, he is an author. He's also a motivational speaker, and he also does psychological training with the military as well too. But for the most part, he's a motivational speaker, talks about child abuse and his story. And fun fact, one of the brothers, Russell, when Dave got taken from the home, Russell was the next person who the mother actually used as a pawn to make it seem like as if, everything was going well. This baby's kept, because she had a meeting with the school, and she would show how this child is doing well and the others are doing well. I don't know what's wrong with Dave. The mother had lots of excuses, but this is one of those things that shows that the abuse could be transferable. And she began abusing Russell, and Russell also wrote a book called A Brother's Journey. Not sure when it was published, but so it lets you know all the things that kind of went along in the house. But that is the story about a child called It. And there's, now to this day, this book is actually banned from being used in schools in certain states because of the abuse that was used, and it's so graphic in nature that they are no longer able to use this book in schools. And that is it.